Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I have a subscriber ask a question which I'm going to flip in here for you guys. And he basically wants to know what's the difference between lat pull-downs and chin-ups or pull-ups in terms of development and everything. The chin-ups and pull-ups seem to be better than lat pull-downs, but why? What's going on? So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing. Let's do a little bit of crafting, and let's talk about that. All right, good question. And, I'm probably going to link it here also, but you guys recall not that long ago, I did a video explaining how dips or weighted dips are basically like squats for the upper body. I mean, obviously squats are a full body movement. And I had a subscriber ask me, well, by that same logic, couldn't a chin up, the way you've described a chin up, be considered like a deadlift for the upper body? And I'm like, well, not entirely, because a deadlift works most of the muscles in the body. But he actually had a good point. When I actually thought it through, I'm like, that actually probably is a valid comparison. Because the chin-up does work most of the muscles of the upper body, including all the stabilizers in the core, and it's a pulling exercise, just like the deadlift is. So similar to the way we compared the dip to being a squats for the upper body, the chin-up very well could be like a deadlift for the upper body. Because again, the way it does things. So what's the difference here? I mean, because it is similar movement pattern, it's just that you're moving your body up to a bar versus moving a bar down to you with a cable. So similar movement. So what is the real difference? Well, like I explained in the dip video, we learned a lot during the Cold War about exercise physiology, because the Russians were so intent on proving communists and the communist system right during the Cold War that included beating the Americans in the Olympics, and particularly in anything strength related. They put an enormous amount of resources into studying exercise science. Like, they literally moved the entire field forward 50 years. They made 50 years worth of advancements in a single decade. And still to this day, some of their works haven't been fully translated, but some exercise physiologists back after the Cold War ended through the 80s and 90s did get a hold of a bunch of their texts and look at it. One of the things that the Russians felt repeatedly was that there was something else going on with the body beyond just the tension and resistance, and it had to do with any exercise that moved the body through space. So that's a good way to look at it, rather than us think about things like closed chain versus open chain. As far as the kinetic chain goes, the Russians looked at it as any exercise in which the body itself moves through space. And so if people want examples of those things, the squat, your body moves with a weight. Deadlift, your body moves. A chin up, a dip, pull up, all of those, your body moves through space while you do a weight. To some extent, some of the Olympic lifts technically count also. The power clean, the snatch and jerk, the push press. But they noted that exercises that move the body through space had a different overall response in the body. Now, some would speculate that it has to do with the fact that simply more stabilizers and things are involved, because the body itself moves instead of just a weight, that there are extra stabilizers and that you get different radiant effects and carryover to different muscle groups. And that seems to be the case, but there also seems to be, from their experience, some sort of hormonal effect going on with actually moving the body itself against the gravity of the earth that they never fully understood, but they noted that they saw a difference in development even when similar sorts of periodization were used. And that was simply something the Russians noted. Now, to this time, I don't think in the Western world we don't talk about that quite as much. But when we look at the differences here, there's some interesting differences that you'll note between a chin-up or even a narrow grip pull-up versus a lat pull-down, and even some more recent studies done. Like if you look at what Brett Contreras put out, that was a glute guy whose name I forgot the other day. And I want people to remember, EMG studies are not the be-all, end-all. EMG studies do not allow a direct comparison from exercise to exercise to say that this exercise definitely recruits more muscle fibers than another, especially if they're within 10 to 15% of each other. It's not accurate enough to tell you that. So people need to not read too much into that. But what he noted in the same studies that he noted, that deadlifts seem to recruit total activity in the lats more than a lot of lat exercises do. Which again, you can't always take that at face value. You got to remember that. Because that you can't do a direct comparison like that, but we know they're in the same range as them. even though they're almost really a dynamic stabilizer in that exercise. The lats are. They're still worked heavily. They're stimulated heavily. Well, what we noted in his studies, the chin up, both the regular chin up and the pull ups with a hammer grip, with your palms facing each other, had some interesting effects. They recruited muscles that we wouldn't think of as primary movers in a pull down movement. They recruited the upper chest, particularly the chin up, recruited the upper chest significantly. I mean, almost as significantly as some of the other studies showed with an incline bench press, with dumbbells or barbells. So we know that the chin up is actually an upper chest exercise based upon the data that he had. That was really interesting. And I've seen some other data that showed similar things. Well, that's not considered to be a muscle that's used in that exercise. But maybe because of the way of the act of pulling yourself up against gravity, it's one of the stabilizers utilized. The same thing we noticed with the long head of the triceps. The hardest head of the tricep to develop on most of your presses saw significant activation in several different studies looking at weighted chin-ups. So normally we would think of the lat pull down as working, the biceps, the brachialis, the forearms to some extent, and then obviously the lats, the rhomboids, the rear delts, some trap, things like that. But the chin up and the pull up both worked all of those things, but they also worked the upper chest and the long head of the triceps significantly. So again, two major muscle groups that people oftentimes spend a lot of time isolating and trying to train separately actually got hit by this basic movement that are normally not considered to be part of that kinetic chain if you were just pulling down with a machine, right? What else did we note? Weighted chin-ups were noticed to be an extremely effective core exercise. The abdominals were heavily involved. And when I mean heavily involved, meaning it would cause significant changes in development and strength. Because again, you can look at different EMG stuff and you can't say, oh, this one is definitely better than this one, but you can say this is a weak stimulator, this one doesn't really stimulate it at all. This is a strong stimulator. That it acts as if this is a direct mover. A direct mover would be like bench press. Your chest and your triceps are direct movers in that. All right, when it's lighting up that much, that means these exercises are turning these muscles into direct movers. Well, the abdominals were direct movers on the weighted chin up, but they were not on the lat pull down. So that's three very, very important muscles that we know that the chin up works, but the lat pull down doesn't seem to. We've had a couple different studies show that. So for core development, for your upper chest, and for your triceps, the chin ups actually help, even though we would think of it as a back and bicep exercise. All right, now that's really significant because what muscle got left out? Because rear delts got hit, so what, maybe side delts, front delts, your lower chest is the only thing that didn't really get affected? I mean, that's not a lot. That means that the weighted chin up, pretty much from your waist up, works something like 80% of the muscle mass of the upper body and treats it as if it's a direct mover. They will actually grow off of that. So that's pretty interesting because the lat pull down only works about half of the muscles, maybe less. But the weighted chin up works around 80% of the muscle mass of the upper body. That makes it basically like a deadlift for the upper body, because what do we say? The deadlift works something like 70 to 80% of the muscle mass in the whole body. Weighted chin up does the same thing. So if people say, what's the difference between a chin up and a lat pull down, or even a weighted pull up and a lat pull down? Well, the fact that it not only works the lats, but it significantly works the biceps. We do know it does work the biceps quite a bit more. And that's just due to the biomechanics that we can see, but it also works the upper chest, triceps, abs, a lot of the core in general. That means the chin up is one hell of an exercise. And the lat pull down is not a bad exercise. I occasionally make fun of it, but only because the chin up also exists. Again, that means the chin up is very possibly one of the single most effective exercises ever developed for your entire upper body. And upper body means even the abdominals. It's an extremely effective exercise. It's an extremely powerful tool, and like I've said before, it's even an amazing bicep builder. And again, we've got so much data out there showing that the biceps seem to be worked more by different variations of the pull-up than they do most types of curls. And again, I know that's EMG studies, so that makes it subject to debate. We can't say that's definitive, but we've had quite a few of them at this point showing that. So, I mean, we know that it's at least as effective as most types of curls for even the biceps. So, yeah, the weighted chin-up will flat out beats the lat pull down. And you know what? Even for people who can't do a lat pull down, you can learn to do chin-ups using bands. You can do chin-ups and pull-ups with bands to assist you, or you can just do just the negatives, the eccentric part of the movement, until you're strong enough to do them. So even not being strong enough isn't really an excuse when you have other ways to work them in. But yeah, chin-up flat out wins. And it's really surprising when you look at the data out there, because this is going back and showing something that the Russians noted years ago. That when you take an exercise, even with a similar style movement pattern that should have the same primary movers, when you move the body through space versus purely moving a weight itself through space, the exercise that moves the body through space seems to be superior in its ability to recruit other various muscles through the body. And here's the thing with something like the chin-up. Even all the bodybuilders, you say, well, I want to isolate this, I want to isolate that. Are you ever going to turn down an exercise that works all sorts of muscles that just happens to throw in your upper chest, your triceps, and your abs for free? Are you ever really going to turn that down? Those are three of the most important muscles for guys who chase aesthetics. Those are actually three muscles that very frequently cause even bodybuilders to lose their competitions because someone else has those more developed than them. Food for thought there. I mean, the chin-up is an all-around amazing exercise because of this. It is an amazing strength builder. And hell, for the guys chasing aesthetics, it corrects half of the common weak points that guys have. It actually works at least half of the muscles that guys can, the three of the most popular weak points that are out there, things that guys oftentimes struggle with. So given the option to do so, you know, there's no reason to ever really need a lat pull down unless you're dealing with some sort of shoulder issue or something that you're having to work around. Chin-ups are just so superior. Fantastic exercise. So hopefully that answers the question, guys. But that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time on my 40th birthday tomorrow.